Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 262 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to look at what makes up an unproductive workplace and some of the common signs and phrases you might hear. And obviously we can use this information to try to, not have those things, ideally. All right, let's get into the episode right now. Now, on the surface, an unproductive workplace can actually seem like a hive of useful activity. People usually aren't sitting around doing nothing. They're often doing quite the opposite, running from one thing to another. I've worked in an unproductive workplace or two in my time for sure, and what I've noticed is that these workplaces are fueled by an underlying set of behaviours and beliefs which form part of the workplace culture. So in this episode, I'm going to take a look at the real cost of an unproductive workplace and some of the key phrases and behaviours that will help you to identify them. Now, at first, it may seem like an unproductive workplace is just about inefficiency, and the only cost may appear to be that more work could be being completed in the time available. So it doesn't really sound like a big deal, does it? The company might be making $100 million when it could perhaps make $110 million if we all worked a little bit more effectively. So who cares? Well, the real cost is the people. When people work in an unproductive workplace, they gradually become worse versions of themselves, in my view. They don't work on the most important things because people haven't decided what they are. They spend time redoing work that was completed incorrectly, or they become stressed trying to finish 10 things when 5 would be more realistic. People will also do work just to be busy because busy people seem more valuable. Now, over time, this type of environment damages people. They lose motivation. They start to think, why bother? Some will leave for more attractive opportunities, but others will stay where they are. Work starts to lose its purpose and meaning. Then people will start to do just enough instead of an excellent job. People feel the most motivated when they are trusted, improving their skills and doing meaningful work. But when we feel unmotivated, it's unlikely we'll spend time trying to get better. We'll just go home and turn on the TV. And one article you may find useful related to this is how to help your team feel a sense of purpose. And I'll put that in the show notes page, which for this episode will be thoughtfulleader.com/262. So there's some phrases that I like to watch out for that can point to an unproductive workplace. And the common language people use is important because it tells you what sort of unwritten ground rules exist in the workplace. These sort of rules are powerful and people tend to follow them because it's easier than going against the grain. Now, these unwritten ground rules are things that are unspoken, but they're generally accepted as the rules of the particular workplace. So we want to watch out for these phrases and remain alert to what they mean. Now, the first one I notice quite a lot is when people say, "Oh, are you busy?" Now, this is a very interesting question, often phrased as a greeting. Someone comes up to you and asks, "Are you busy?" or "Have you been busy?" This is a leading question because it expects you to say yes. Now, when someone asks me this question, I feel a weird tension, a feeling that I'm supposed to say yes. They're expecting me to say, "Yes, I've been very busy." Now, this is because we have been conditioned to believe that busy is good and not busy is bad. And this means that being busy is the target. Instead of doing excellent, important work, we are actually just aiming for busy. And when you aim for busy, you could just be doing anything. It doesn't really matter what it is. And Lao Tzu had an old quote, "Doing nothing is better than being busy doing nothing," which is quite a good one, I thought. And you can listen to episode 156 of this podcast about dismantling the cult of busyness on this topic as well. I'll put that in the show notes page. The next phrase, which is quite damaging, are things like, "Oh, good afternoon," or "working a half day." Now, this phrase is a classic in many unproductive workplaces. When someone starts work a little later than someone else, they are greeted with these types of phrases. And these phrases are indirectly saying, "You should come in earlier." Now, why? Well, it's because people believe that when you come in earlier, you are more dedicated. Of course, it shouldn't really matter whether we start at 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. It's actually about getting the work done. But this ghost of the past still exists. Early starters are perceived as more dedicated and committed. Now, this is a dangerous attitude because it makes people feel bad for coming in later than others. And this could lead to greater stress, trying to juggle family commitments, or forcing yourself to be a morning person when you're really not that productive at that time. Now, I once worked in a company where there was someone who started early every day, and he took pride in being the first in the office. Of course, he left very early too, so he wasn't doing any more hours than anyone else. One day I arrived early for a meeting and I saw him at his desk reading the paper. So coming in early doesn't make you any more or less dedicated, and when I saw that guy reading the paper, it really drummed that lesson into me. Number 3 is an interesting one, and this is if someone says to you, well, it would be nice to be able to have a break. So picture this scene. You're taking 5 minutes to have a coffee and someone walks past busily saying, oh, it'd be nice to be able to take a break. Now, what are they really saying? They're saying things like, well, I'm more important because I'm busier than you and you're not as dedicated as me. Now, the funny thing is it's now quite well known that taking breaks is very good for productivity. Now, I'm going to take one after I record this episode because I've been speaking for about an hour already. Now, when someone says this to you, what they might really be saying is, I wish I could take a break, but I feel guilty when I do. And that, my thoughtful friends, is a problem. If people feel guilty about having breaks, you are going to have people heading slowly for burnout. Now, the next one I've got for you is, I've been in back-to-back meetings all day. Now, when someone proudly announces this in the workplace, I find it quite strange. I'd be embarrassed to say this out loud because it would mean I have no control over my own schedule and I'm letting other people dictate how I work even though I know it's not productive. So you can be sure that when people say this, it means they believe that they are in high demand and very important because they are in back-to-back meetings. But once again, this is a misguided belief. And there's some research from Microsoft that shows that taking breaks between meetings reduces stress and helps you to focus and engage better. Which is not really rocket science, it's fairly intuitive. So people should perform better when they stop themselves from being in back-to-back meetings. And I might have told you that there were 5 phrases in an unproductive workplace, but actually there's only 4. So there you go. I must have run out of inspiration. Now, while workplace culture is a real thing consisting of unwritten ground rules and behavioral norms, I don't think it's good enough to say that we can't change, because it's the culture here. Now, why is that? Because culture is made from people. You can't see and hear culture. What you can see and hear is what people say and what they do. You can't hold culture accountable. You can hold people accountable for their behavior and what they say. And as a leader reading this, you're actually in a good position to help shape the culture. The first thing you can do is to start by noticing the language used in your team. Next, you can set an example and be a good role model so that others can feel more comfortable engaging in productive behavior. And this includes encouraging flexible working, taking breaks, having shorter meetings, and focusing on outcomes instead of working hours. You can also coach your people in productive behaviors like scheduling time in their calendars for important work and saying no instead of taking on more and more. Another thing you can do is call out situations when you hear people reinforcing unproductive behaviors, such as when you hear the phrases I've covered earlier. What you will do is slowly set a new tone for your team and workplace. Unproductive workplaces are quite dangerous because they destroy motivation. They make people less than what they could be, which erodes confidence and sets a low standard for what they can achieve. But you can guide your team to a much better place. Now, I'm interested, what else do you notice about an unproductive workplace, and have you worked in one before? You can let me and all the Thoughtful Leaders know on the show notes page in the comments, thoughtfulleader.com/262. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can start to get rid of some of these unproductive workplaces out there by shifting our behavior, and we do it incrementally, but over time it can happen. All right, keep up the thoughtful leadership, and I'll be back next time.